Rip can be categorized as a mini-boss for Alucard before the Great Battle of London. And although she doesn't really have that much relevance in the story, she still is an interesting character that's worth looking at. Her first appearance was actually in Hellsing the Dawn in 1944. Alucard and Walter were raiding Millennium facilities, and a then-human Rip Van Winkle was way too late to inform the Major, who was at that point already under attack. Well, actually, her first appearance was in another, let's say, spicy manga by Kota Hirano called Coyote. So why reuse an older character? When asked, he said that he likes her design, because it's erotic to him. Black hair, small chest, tall, long hair, freckles. The man has taste. Also, I got this information from the Hellsing guidebook I imported from Japan. Using the Google Lens Translate function, you can go to such a book amazingly fast. You should check that out if it interests you. But when I'm not reading this book, I'm displaying it proudly with Manga Guardian. Manga Guardian offers everything you would want for your manga collection. The stands look really clean, offer tons of adjustability, and make your collection pop out so much more. With my code, Sleepy15, you get 15% off of everything. So go to mangaguardian.com, that's manga-guardian.com, and use the code Sleepy15, or check the links in the description. And back to the video. Kota Hirano tends to just reuse older character designs he really likes in his later works. Coyote is also Nazi themed, but really nothing special. So let's skip it and go back to the story. Hellsing the Dawn, 1944. Walter and Alucard raid Millennium. She sees Alucard, who was having a cigarette break with his coffin. I love Hellsing humor. She doesn't really understand who she's talking to. But when she realizes that Alucard is one of the intruders, she directly goes into the offensive. Only to be immediately defeated, and not even by Alucard, but his coffin. This actually ends her part of the story so far, and 50 years later we see her silhouette before she gets her first real act. An unidentified helicopter approaches an English aircraft carrier called the HMS Eagle. And of course they all wonder, who is so stupid and doesn't identify themselves approaching a heavily armed aircraft carrier? Also, here we hear her singing a very particular track, called Das Englandlied.
Heute wollen wir ein Liedlein singen, trinken wollen wir den kühlen Wein. Und die Gläser sollen dazu klingen, denn es muss geschieden sein. Gib mir deine Hand, deine weiße Hand, leb wohl mein Schatz, leb wohl.
The song basically is about invading Britain and is a war propaganda song from World War I that had a reappearance around 1939. Well, you can guess why. After getting no confirmation, they devised the plan to shoot down the helicopter. But what they didn't expect was that they were already infiltrated by vampire-turned-betrayers, who made quick work out of the commando bridge and the crew and turned them all into ghouls. This opened the stage for Rip Van Winkle, who declares, "Thus the hunting ground becomes the hunters. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor. My bullet punishes all without distinction." Which sounded cool in my memory. Rewatching this, it now feels a little too try-hard. But that's why you have to give props to Team 4-Star. They really turned up a character to 200%.
Rip Van Winkle, here we go. We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
But now it's time to dig a little deeper into Rip Van Winkle, starting by her name. Rip Van Winkle is the name of the protagonist from the self-titled book by Washington Irving that was released in 1819. To summarize the story, Rip Van Winkle was a farmer who hated work and his wife, and uses every occasion to skip both. He often goes through strolls through the forest And on one of these occasions, he meets a group of weirdly clothed people who invite him for a drink. He drinks and falls asleep. He then wakes up with a long beard and covered in leaves. And after some confusion, he realizes that he has been asleep for 20 years. He slept during the American Revolution and the Independence Wars, and basically woke up in a new country. But he lived the rest of his life in his daughter's home, and was glad that his nagging wife was dead. Beautiful story, I know. But what has that to do with Hellsing? You could draw a parallel that Rip was asleep in times that are long gone. The war is lost and she just had to accept it but didn't want to. Well, she got her wake-up call later, in the form of a weirdly erotic vampire in a high-speed airplane, but yeah, that's for later. Another theory for the name is that Kota Hirano liked the name and didn't think too much about it. I prefer the second thesis. Also, weird name for a German girl, but what do I know? But where were we? Ah yes, the Eagle. She boards the ship before confronting the crew and thanking them for the cooperation. She then kills every one of the people that helped her get onto the ship. I mean, who likes betrayers? It also gives us this meme-worthy clip.
The bitch set us up!
I don't know why it sounds so funny. See kids, that's why you shouldn't join vampire Nazi groups. Then her crew that was stashed in boxes take over the ship. But first, she has to make a cute painting, which, to quote her, it is just not right if it's missing. And she also renames the eagle to Adler, which is just German for eagle. You can also see her sunbathing, although under an umbrella. She seems to have a high resistance to sun, unlike the other vampires. The umbrella says Samson's Drugstore. Apparently this is her favorite umbrella maker. Also, I looked, the store doesn't exist. So it's just a gimmick. But at this point, the ship is almost unstoppable. Airstrikes are getting shot down easily by the ship's anti-air cannons and Rip's homing bullets. Also, you can hear her singing a particular tune. I would highly recommend watching a multi-language video on that. All the A's did phenomenal jobs on that. I would show it, but you know, copyright. But back to the story, the ship is borderline unstoppable. So what do we do? Ah yes, just kamikaze the insane vampire down the ship. And that's what they do. That scares the crap out of Rip. While the crew believes that this is just a recon plane, she realizes what this thing is going to do and who is on that plane. Alucard has probably the second most epic entrance in the Hellsing manga by just going straight down into the ship. They try to stop him with everything they have, but to no avail. Then Alucard directly goes on the offensive. We see Rip having a flashback to the mayor, who warns her about the end of the Freischütz. Okay, we have to go into that now. The Freischütz is a German opera from Karl Maria von Weber, where magical bullets exist that can hit every target you want, as in Rip and Winkle's abilities. But they get their abilities from a pact with the devil, here called Samiel. In the story, the main antagonist is Caspar, who made that deal with Samiel, but now the devil is after him to get his part of the deal, which is Caspar's life. The deal gives you 7 magical bullets you have to forge yourself. The last one, however, is controlled by the devil himself. In the end of the story, Caspar tries to offer his friend's life for some extra time, which Samiel accepts, but the plan fails in the end and Caspar still dies. But you get the motive. Rip sees herself as the Freischütz, and Samiel is coming. Well, not Samiel, but Alucard. And that's worse. Rip has another little panic attack, but then gets her nerves together and tries to fight against Alucard, who tanks a few shots, but then just catches the bullet, completely demoralizing any resistance. What then happens is almost 20 pages of torture, with a strange erotic undertone. Well, he likes the character and he did spicy work before, so that explains it, but doesn't make it any less weird. The doctor wants to end Rip's suffering, but the Major stops him as Rip has fulfilled her role. So this shows that her death was completely predicted by the Mayor. I kinda doubt she was okay with that, but okay. At least she gets a proper send-off.
Achtung! Auf Wiedersehen!
Auf Wiedersehen! Auf Wiedersehen!
She then has her final appearance, when she gets summoned as Alucard's familiar and wreaks havoc, only to burn again after Alucard was heavily damaged by Anderson. In the end of the war, we see her musket laying on the floor, and this is her real final act. Rip's appearance started a shift in Hellsing, and readies the reader or watcher for the next part that is the rest of the manga. I stand firm on my belief that Kota Hirano is just a massive fan of World War II themes and imagery. Same for Rip Van Winkle. Just put as many things that seem cool and kinda historical in one character and give her a completely overblown death. I like how he plays with historical and literary motives to convey character depth, but in the end just goes for what is cool to him. Same for Rip. He wanted a character just not to be boring, and he managed that perfectly. He really likes his characters, and it shows. You can say about Hellsing what you want, but it is clearly something written out of passion, which makes the show so stand out compared to other anime. But that marks the end of this video. If you want to see more about Hellsing characters, check the channel and subscribe. Leave a like, and see you in the next one. Bye!